we go to break talking about the Middle East, and ultimately when we talk about American foreign policy, that it seems to be the predominant issue that people speak about right now. When you say get out of the whole area, get out of the Arabian Peninsula, get out of it, and you know where I'm going to go with this, because the one thing that has come back to hit your campaign has been there have been people either associated or not associated with the campaign who have had things to say about Israel, which some people have considered to be on the other side of the pale. Would you have the United States cut off all relations with Israel as well in terms of financial aid or in terms of grants or military cooperation?
I'd treat everybody equally. You know, now we try to buy peace by giving money to both sides. We're arming the Arabs wholesale right now. Right now, of course, we're arming the Sunnis in Iraq. So no, we should treat them all the same. We should trade and be friends with them, and Israel should not be held back. We restrain them when they want to defend their borders, and we restrain them when they want to have their own peace treaties. You know, we say, oh no, you can't talk to them, but you can't go and do this. But Israel's very capable of taking care of themselves. Matter of fact, I think they would be actually stronger because they could make their own decision. You know, just recently, of course, we probably participated, but Israel thought it was in their interest to bomb a site that they considered was a threat in Syria. Not that I thought it was the right thing to do, but they had the right to do it the same way as I defended their right to bomb the nuclear reactor back in the 80s in Iraq. So, and then they had nuclear weapons, probably 300 of them. I think because Iran might get a nuclear weapon sometime in the next decade or two is not a threat really to anybody, because I lived through.
Are you sure about that, though? I mean, and you have military service that I respect greatly as well, so you have insight that many of us don't have. And serving in Congress, you have information many of us don't have. But if what we've heard from the CIA in the last week is indeed correct, and this place in Syria was about to go hot, you know, in very short order, and was not going to provide nuclear power, and we didn't know about it until, at least we didn't know about how close they were, then how can we be so sure that it's a decade before the Iranians will get it?
But I would say, how can you be so sure it was about to go hot? Because just remember the war propaganda that led up to Iraq. That was a serious mistake because there was nothing to it. But I do remember the Cold War very well because I was called to service in 1962 at the height of the Cuban crisis. And I was in service for 5 years. And, you know, the Soviets had 40,000 of these things with intercontinental ballistic missiles, and they were 90 miles off our shore, and we didn't have to fight them.
Right, but we still had that.
So, I mean, we overcame tremendous obstacles.
We did have that, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we did have that philosophy of MAD, mutually assured destruction, and the sense that we're dealing with people who were not all inclined to, you know, self-immolate themselves if they could avoid it, if they wanted to live. There are those who say with the Iranians, it's not even a question of whether they are willing to, you know, commit national suicide, but who they might give these weapons to.
Yeah, but they're not going to do anything that's going to devastate their country. You know, the Iranians have not participated in suicide terrorism at all. It's the people who are in occupied territories. Last year
they claim to be supporting people in Iraq and in Afghanistan.
Yeah, but the actual suicide terrorism, the people who are motivated, last year there were 650 suicide terrorist attacks. 550 of them were in Iraq and Afghanistan, two places that we have occupied. In Lebanon in the 80s, there was a lot of suicide terrorism, and our Marines were killed. As soon as we left, the suicide terrorism quit. And this is work done by Robert.
But the fighting didn't quit. The fighting didn't quit. The Syrians were still there. They assassinated a whole bunch of Lebanese Christian leaders.
But eventually, things were worked out, and there was, you know, it came up
with Syrian domination for the last decade and a half.
No, I mean, there's no guarantee of peace, but one thing we guarantee is that Americans wouldn't go, our country wouldn't go bankrupt, and we wouldn't continue to use tens of thousands of people and injuries. Just think of the hundreds of thousands of people now trying to get medical care from our Veterans Association, and they're not getting it.
No, it's a sin. What's going on there is a sin. It's but I need to, I want to move on to more to the economic in a second, but I need to, in principle, because I know you like to talk political theory as well, and I know you're a great believer in principle. Does the United States have a moral obligation to use force to intercede when it perceives genocide or something akin to that is in the works?
As an individual, maybe, but not as a country. I don't have the constitutional or moral authority to take you or your children and say, well, there's a problem in Africa or there's a problem in the Middle East, and you're forced to take your money or your kids to do something good. If you want to donate your money and you want to volunteer and you want to go over, that's okay. And America is a great nation and we're prosperous, and when people have had troubles, when there's been starvations and all this, we have contributed. But to go over, not only do I see this as not a moral imperative, I think it too often backfires, because so often when governments give aid to governments, and it's supposed to help the people who are starving, it ends up helping certain factions and actually never gets to the people it's supposed to help. So there's no practical benefits from so much of this intervention.
But why is it when we see America pull back or weaken in any way, we see so much of the world, our allies and others, say we need a strong America, we need an involved America, we need an America who is around the globe?
Well, I don't know how many people are saying that. All I know is when we left Vietnam after a few years of chaos, they became westernized, they became capitalistic. China became our banker. We traveled to Vietnam after 20 years of the French and the Americans fighting and telling the Vietnamese how we want them to live. It didn't work. So there's reason for hope that the Middle East would be much better if we would just allow them to have a say about their country. That country was an artificial country set up by the West after World War I. The Iraqis have never had a chance to devise their own borders over there. Who knows, if we wouldn't have done anything, or the West had not done anything after World War I, there might have been 3 countries there that have been getting along with each other. So I would say try a peaceful means a long time before you try war.
We only have about a minute left. Time is going too quickly. What do you do after this race is over? Are you going to run again? Are you going to seek higher office again?
Well, I've been re-elected to Congress in my primary, and I don't have an opponent, so I'll be serving in the Congress for the next 2 years. But I will probably always be interested and active. I approach this in a manner that I believe education is the most important thing. Ideas are important. Philosophy is important. And promoting these ideas that made America great and that the founders were keen on will be something I will continue, because that is what the real revolution is all about.
Well, we have to leave it there. The book is The Revolution, a Manifesto. Ron Paul, a pleasure speaking with you, sir. Thanks a lot. Don't go away. Coming back in a couple of moments, Ariana.